hand if you have a personal social media account, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. All right. Raise your hand if your organization has a, awesome. Raise your hand if you are the person responsible for that or if you have a role in that. Awesome. Okay, all right. One more show of hands. Would it be helpful if I went through a few tips for platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn? Should I save that to the end? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, all right. I'll talk fast. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt. So I understand, did I hit the wrong button? No. This doesn't bode well for me talking about technology and social media and digital. Okay. So tomorrow is your Hill Day, which is excellent. Hopefully some of these things that I will walk through you might have thought about. If not, maybe you have some time to do it tonight. If not, that's okay. We'll do it next year. You can do the follow-up. So why do we advocate on social media? I'm sure everybody here, it's clear by the show of hands, everybody uses it, everybody's aware of it. It's a really powerful platform that allows people to educate, to empower, to engage with their lawmakers, with other advocates, other patients, the media, the general public. And so we'll just go through a couple suggestions and tips for you to better use it for your organization. First, let's go through a few stats. This is from the 2015 Congressional Management Foundation's SocialCongress survey. So I don't know if anyone's really surprised by these. I'm kind of not, but I'm going to give you some context because I think that's really the most important part. So we all know that social media is continuing to grow as one of our advocacy tools. What we're really realizing is that members are actually paying attention to the online conversations. They're going through and they're reading the comments and they're taking a temperature on what's happening. And they're using social media to gauge how they'll respond to a certain piece of legislation. So because of that, we want to make sure that our voices are heard and that we're not wasting our time and their time. So that starts with communicating tips and tricks to your advocates and your audience. So the first thing is you want to clearly identify yourself as a constituent. We've heard in the survey that as soon as a person says that they're a constituent, their lawmaker instantly starts to pay more attention because they care. It's a real person from their district. We also know that one staffer, according to the survey, said, social media allows us to engage at a level and pace that's meaningful to decision making. So as quickly as you shoot off that tweet or post that message on Facebook, they can instantaneously see it in real time. They have a pulse on what the nation's thinking, and that can help them with their decision making process. So we want to make sure that when we do, you might do traditional things like phone banking or petitions or online petitions, letter writing campaigns, email writing campaigns. You also want to make sure that you have a carefully planned out social media campaign so you can instantly reach the member's office and that staffers see the comments and they're realizing what's happening in real time. So we also know that congressional offices are looking at the number of shares, retweets, and likes. And they're taking note of the quality of the comments. And we want to take advantage of this by making sure that we do a call to action whenever possible. So it'll help you yield better results in your messaging, and it'll help staffers realize and kind of work through the clutter to realize that they should be paying attention to this. So what does that kind of call to action mean? It could be support this, please vote against this, here are 3 reasons why. For more information, click here, watch this video to learn more. Those are just a few easy suggestions. I'm going to skip through this section. We'll come back to it. Okay. Here's what we call our pre-fly-in checklist. Have you guys discussed any of this so far? No? Okay. So the first thing that we want to do, it sounds pretty basic, but you want to make sure that you're following your legislators on social media. You want to make sure that you're following them on wherever you have an organization platform, you want to make sure that you're following them. So if you're on Twitter, you want to make sure that you're following them on Twitter. Facebook, that sort of thing. Instagram, I'm not quite sure how many lawmakers are actually on Instagram, but probably a few of them are, I'm sure. You also want to consider doing this if you are advocating on your own personal account, if your organization doesn't have its own account. You can do this personally. You also want to make sure that your websites have the latest up-to-date information, make sure it has your latest policy ask, updated contact information in the About section, in the footer of the website, and that all of your social media handles are visible on the website. And then on the same page, you want to make sure that your social media handles in the About section on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, they also have the up-to-date contact information and your most recent policy ask. And then it's also helpful to write a list of talking points. You probably already have this for some of your in-person meetings that you're going to be having, but why not just transform it and make it a little bit more digital? You can add hashtags, you can just trim them down, make them a little bit more concise, but pre-writing them makes it easy to go, so you can just copy and paste it day of, the day before. You can schedule them beforehand. There are free tools that you can use to do that. You also want to make sure that you've downloaded any relevant apps. It's basic, but if you're using Twitter, it's easier to have the Twitter app on your phone. Same goes with all the other social platforms. There are lobby day apps also that you can use that might help streamline the process too. You can make sure that you've got some photo editing apps, video editing apps if you need to. They're all free resources as well. And probably this is the most important tip of the day. You want to create a hashtag. This is a way to organize all of the collective tweets, Facebook messages, Instagram posts, and to really boost and leverage the online conversation and to make your voice be heard. My recommendation, if at all possible, is to avoid using acronyms in your hashtag. People don't really know what, to give you an example, at Lilly every year in September or October we have our Global Day of Service, and previously our hashtag was LGDOS, Lilly Global Day of Service, and then with the year. And we realized that doesn't really make any sense, and no one would really know what that meant if they clicked on the hashtag and saw a search result for it. So now we've rebranded it and we use the hashtag #WeAreLilly. So using something that's a little bit more actionable and relevant and applicable will help you stand out. You also want to make sure that you're gathering all the other relevant social media handles for other advocacy organizations, patient groups, media outlets that you might want to tag in some of your responses. And finally, you want to make sure that your phone is charged and you've got some extra battery packs along the way. As part of the list of talking points, you also might want to think about creating a digital one-pager to either share with them beforehand via email. If you've got an iPad, it's something that you can quickly pull up, or you can have them distribute day of. We've heard that the majority of staffers actually enjoy getting a pre-read as opposed to a leave behind. So this is something that you can do so that when you go to the meeting that they feel prepared, and hopefully they'll have time to have read up on some of your issues and can be a little bit more informed in the discussion. If you do that, I would recommend that you also include your social media profiles so they make sure to know where to find you. Okay, so day of. This is, so of the people who are in charge of their social media accounts or have a day-to-day role in them, how often do you find yourselves posting content? Just curious. Daily? Okay, great. Well, a flying day is a really great use to collect future content in the form of videos, photos, memorable quotes, just a recap of what you've discussed. It's a really great opportunity to have some good planning for if you do kind of Throwback Thursday posts or Flashback Friday posts, just to have in your back pocket for those slow days where you're not really sure what to do, but you know you probably should be posting something on social media. So we know that the day of can be really hectic, But it's a great opportunity for live tweeting, live blogging, live Facebooking, Instagramming, videoing, going live on Periscope, on Facebook Live, on Instagram Live, on Snapchat. We'll go into that later on. And to also do a kind of day in the life. If you're a patient, this is a unique opportunity to show your perspective and what you're going through on Capitol Hill. You can do it with ease. You know, you're not really tied to, just because you're live tweeting or live blogging, don't feel pressured to do it every minute or to say, now I'm walking up the steps to the Rayburn building. You don't need to do that. Even if you do it 3 or 4 times in that day, that's still really powerful, and it shows people, and hopefully people will want to stay tuned and be captivated and follow you along the rest of the day. You also want to make sure that you take down as many notes as possible. You're probably going to be taking notes anyway and writing reminders to yourself. If someone that you encounter says something really memorable, you could turn it into a quote card. You can make a really nice, visually appealing image and post it on Twitter, post it on Facebook. There's some free resources that I'm going to show you guys, so you don't have to be a graphic designer or have a big budget in order to do this. It's really free and it's really easy. And of course, you also want to remember to use your hashtag. Oh, this didn't format nicely. Okay, well, in the days, weeks, and months following your visit, you want to make sure that you follow up with a thank you note. I think the previous group said it before, you know, you want to make sure that you are catching more flies with honey and be gracious and thank them for their time. Don't forget to use your hashtag when doing this so they can remind them and jog their memory, and also it can kind of reinvigorate that online conversation. You want to make sure to tag away. Make sure that you're tagging as many relevant people in the photo as possible. You can also tag other groups that you feel are relevant that might not necessarily be in the photo, but you want to make sure that they see the content that you're posting. And you also want to make sure to post photos. Congressional offices love it when they get their photo out on social. It's a really easy lift for them to just hit that retweet button. It shows that they're engaged, that they're staying attuned to what their constituents want. It's always really nice to ask them beforehand if you can take their photo, and as best as you can, try to make it flattering, because then those will up your chances of getting retweeted. So you also want to do a social media follow-up. We did a checklist to make sure that we were following the most relevant people. Afterwards, you want to make sure that you're following any people that you may have met along your journey. Make sure that you're liking them, putting them on Twitter lists, and just checking them out for future reference. You also might want to consider writing a recap blog. This is true if you didn't have the opportunity to do some live tweeting, or even if you did, there's a really cool resource called Storyfy, and you can go through and pull some of your older social media posts and kind of collate them into a live blog that will pull all of that together and make it really visually appealing. It's a really easy lift, and there you go. You have a blog that kind of gives a very good social recap of your fly-in day. And then you also want to make sure that you're staying active. There's probably been a lot of buildup on your social channels before this, day of. You don't want that to die down. Even if it's doing something as simple as retweeting someone else or sharing a relevant news article, just try and make sure that you're staying active in the conversation. So now that your fly-in day is over, what do you do? How can you still continue to be engaged in the months leading up to your next event, or policy briefing, or your next fly-in day? Well, you want to make sure that you're able to represent yourself and the organization and put a little flair and flavor and personality into it. You know, it's really easy to just kind of copy and paste in an about section or your elevator pitch or your policy priorities and just kind of spit them out on social. You'll just be much more effective if you can put your own spin into it. Talk about why a certain aspect is important to you or important to your loved one. Inject a little bit of personality into it and let it reflect your own personality, your own voice. You also want to make sure that you're keeping your eye on the policy prize and you're not really engaging in topics that aren't to the benefit of your organization. You don't want to do negative attacks on other advocacy groups or other pieces of legislation. Straying away from your core message is really going to diminish your credibility and what you're about. Speaking of which, you also want to make sure that you're elevating legitimate online sources. no fake news. You want to make sure that you're sharing good content and relevant facts. And then just as it is offline, conversation is a two-way street online. You want to be social. The more you engage upon topics and the more you engage your community and talk about it with other people, the more your message moves forward. So I think a lot of you would probably, I would imagine that this would be a problem for a lot of you, or struggle. How do we turn an offline event and make it online? How do we make the most bang for our buck in terms of not reinventing the wheel and making sure that we're mentioning things online and taking offline online? So these are just a few ideas. Nothing's really groundbreaking. Even if you're having kind of a roundtable discussion or an internal meeting and brainstorming session, you can reuse your hashtag and post a message and say something like, really invigorated by the discussion we're having today and looking forward to our next meeting, photo of everybody at the roundtable. It's not going to be the most compelling or exciting, but you're talking about it and it's shedding a light and you're doing kind of behind the scenes into what goes on in your organization. Here's a question that we get a lot. How do you tailor your message to a specific audience? Good news about social is you can reach a lot of different people and you have the ability to custom tailor your message to each individual audiences. What we always say is, you should kind of picture your audience. Who are they? What do they like? What do they do? What are their habits? Let's say that your audience that you're trying to reach are mostly women, and maybe they're moms, and they're really busy, and they're juggling a household and a full-time job. Well, thinking the way that they think, it might not be the best idea to post something on social in the middle of the day when they are at their desk doing conference calls or running around doing errands and staying home with the kids. Maybe it's better to schedule your post later in the afternoon when they're on the metro, on their commute home, or perhaps they're maybe waiting in the carpool line at school pickup, or maybe even later in the night when they finally get that time to sit on the couch, maybe with a glass of wine and scroll through their Facebook feed. Maybe that's a more opportunistic time to reach them. Try to put yourself in their shoes too. If you only had 3 minutes of someone's attention span, what would you do in that time to get their attention? What would you want them to know about your organization? What action would you want them to take? And finally, you don't really want to talk in a vacuum. You want to engage with others, invite them in the conversation, and share others' perspectives and voices too. Here are some ideas, also kind of taking that offline into online. Some of you might have a big, long white paper or policy position, or do long studies and things like that. How do you transform that content? How do you make it more applicable and use it to your benefit when you're advocating? And how do you make it easily shareable online? I think I've encountered this a lot in the various jobs that I've had, and people sometimes try and fit everything into one tweet or one mega long Facebook post. Spread the wealth. You don't have to be constricted to 140 characters. You can take one paragraph and do 10 different social posts just from that one paragraph. You don't need to rely on one post to tell your story. You should consider using infographics. Again, I'm going to show you guys a free resource to use that can so you can build your own infographic. It's free, it's easy, it's a really great way and a visually appealing way to get the story across, because people don't like to read big chunks of text. They want to break it up. It's easily shareable. You'll be able to get your message out faster and an easy to understand way. I want to give another creative example that we actually did at Lilly a few years ago. So we're always looking for interesting opportunities to engage in a conversation or pop culture events and things like that. So a few years ago, we created an infographic with 3 different pies, and each pie had a different fact about Medicare Part D. And the title of the infographic was "Why We're Thankful for Medicare Part D." And we launched it and shared it on Thanksgiving Day. And then we've reused it ever since. In fact, we're going to reuse it in a few weeks on March 14th for Pi Day. We reused it on National Pizza Day, which was a few weeks ago, as another type of pie that we like. So wouldn't traditionally associate Thanksgiving or Pi Day or National Pizza Day with Medicare Part D, but it's just another creative way to insert yourself into the conversation, and maybe you'll find some new followers that way. This is something that I'm sure a lot of organizations struggle with too. You probably only meet a few times a year, if that. How do you stay connected in between events? How many people have a Facebook group or an email listserv? Awesome. That's a really great, easy way to stay connected and share news, share updates, share content with one another. You can host monthly Twitter chats, Google Hangouts, Facebook Lives, Facebook discussions, live Q&As. Do any of you guys engage in that already? Awesome, great. You can also follow each other on social, make sure that you're staying up to date and messaging each other with any relevant updates about your organization. Share what you guys are doing, be each other's best advocates and champions. And finally, it's kind of old school, but you can set up an email listserv too. That's a great way to communicate. So let me go back to some of the tips. Oops. Okay. I'll actually, in the interest of time, let me skip through since Facebook's kind of been around for a while. Does anybody have any specific Facebook questions that they want to ask? All right, Twitter. Oops. Okay. How many people have a Twitter account here? Do you guys find that that's the primary source of your one-stop shop for sharing your social? You get the most bang for your buck out of Twitter? Yes, yes. No? What do you see? Facebook. Okay. Facebook, okay, all right, okay. Well, we can go back to that. Here are just a few kind of suggestions for working through Twitter if you use it. You'll see down here the hashtags tweet. So a lot of the times we see people loading up their tweets with hashtags, which I think when Twitter first launched was a really interesting approach. Now, it's kind of hard to read, right? We like to abide by the no more than 3 other kind of extraneous pieces of content in a tweet. So whether that's a hashtag, a link, a photo, you want to make sure that you're not asking too much and straying from people's attention by loading up your tweet with hashtags. You also want to make sure that you're asking questions. Asking questions increase engagement. Actually, tweets that have questions perform 5 times better than just straight up tweets without anything. And photos and videos and images and graphics like those quote cards that I mentioned before, or actually this is one of the little visual images that we were saying, the periodic table day. That was really easy to create, and it performed really well because it's nice and visually appealing. Those perform much better than just a straight ordinary tweet. You might also want to consider using a bit.ly shortener so you can track some analytics and see how well your tweets perform and how many people are going back to your website or other source material that you're using. Instagram, should I talk about this? Yeah? Okay, great. So I actually think that Instagram has the potential to be really powerful in this space. I would encourage all of you guys who are on Instagram to follow Humans of New York if you don't already. They do a really great job of storytelling. They post some really compelling images, and then we'll do long-form posts and kind of man-on-the-street interviews, which each of the patients. A few weeks ago, they were in actually Brazil, and they were just talking to people about reproductive rights and women's rights, and it was really interesting to read the stories. Excuse me. So Instagram is a great way to reach younger audiences too. excuse me. If you want to reach the 18 to 29 demographic, Instagram is the way to go. It's a great way to share kind of behind the scenes looks at your organization, a day in the life of a patient journey. It's a good way to interact with other younger groups, other patients that might be out there, and it's also a way to kind of take the advocacy onto Instagram. So you wouldn't ordinarily put the two together, but let's say there's a piece of legislation that you are really for or against. By showing a face with the piece of legislation, posting a photo of a family or a child that might be impacted, and saying something in the description of, this person is why we want you to vote against X piece of legislation. That's much more powerful than just sending a tweet or asking someone to sign a petition, putting a face to the issue. There's also more than 300 million people on Instagram, and it's a platform that's really growing. If you consider launching an Instagram account, I would say that you want to launch with at least 6, preferably 9 photos when you launch, so that when people look at the account from their phone, they're not seeing blank spaces, they're seeing kind of preloaded content that's already there. LinkedIn, how many people are on LinkedIn? Does anybody use it for advocacy? Awesome, okay. LinkedIn is a really great way to leverage your organization, your employees as thought leaders on a specific topic area and to engage with other policymakers. It's often called the professional person's Facebook, so the conversations that you'll find there are maybe a little bit more formal, they might be a little wonkier than, say, Facebook or Twitter, but it's still a platform that should not be ignored. A growing number of association leaders are actually using LinkedIn's platform to post their own thoughts about industry-specific issues, policy, and to help strengthen their brand online. LinkedIn has a whole host of advocacy resources for people. If you just search advocacy or Google LinkedIn and advocacy, they have a whole subset of free tools and case studies and testimonials from people as well. Another great benefit for LinkedIn is they're not relying on algorithms or ranking systems to determine who sees what content. If you post it, everyone that follows you will see it. So it's a really good guarantee to make sure that what you post, you're maximizing what you post and the majority of people see it. Okay, live video. It's scary, but it's fun. Has anybody done live video? Awesome! Can you just quickly share what you did, what platform was it Facebook Live, Periscope?
Is it on? Yeah. I do Facebook Live, Periscope, and YouNow, and YouTube. And we broadcast on all of them at the same time using multiple cameras.
Oh my gosh!
And have multiple conversations going on and cross-platform everything.
That's really impressive.
Thank you.
How often do you guys?
We kind of broke it up into seasons so people can get used to seeing us. So we call it the Ken and Barbie Show. And really we just go on and talk about advocacy and things that are going on in the chronic pain community and what we want to see improve and how people can get involved and help. And
I'm going to find you guys after. That's awesome.
Okay,
that's really cool.
And we break it up into 8. So like we do 8 episodes and then we take a couple months off and people start saying, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? And give us topics and things to talk about for our next season.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
That is great. So I think this is definitely the future of advocacy, this live video. Yes, another question?
I just have to share. This morning
Yeah.
This morning we were able to attend the Mississippi Morning with Senator Roger Wicker. And was it going in or coming out? Coming out. We were both so excited. We both got on our Facebook pages and did the go live, and it was neat. It was exciting. Got
Awesome.
a lot of views. Yeah.
Awesome. Love it. That's great. So when social media first started, when you heard the word video or it was suggested as a tactic, people kind of rolled their eyes because it meant that you had to have your own camera crew. It would take, a few hours at least, if not days, to get something produced and then uploaded online. But now with these, everybody is their own videographer, their own camera crew. You don't need any fancy equipment. You hit the button, you go, people see it, that's it. There's so much flexibility and so much possibility by experimenting with live video. You don't need to spend money on it. In fact, even if it's pretty raw, even if you goof, it just makes you more authentic and more credible and more relatable, and who doesn't like that? So here are a few kind of platforms that I've suggested if you wanted to dip your toes into the live streaming waters. The first is Facebook Live. It's available directly on Facebook. You hit a button, you go live. You have the ability to go anywhere from 5 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds to 90 minutes. But Facebook actually suggests going at least 10 minutes to make sure that you're allowing for people to come in and watch and ask questions and engage. These videos automatically get archived onto your Facebook page, so you can share them later. Again, reusable content, future content. It also gives you more flexibility if you want to hide them or delete them, but you do have the ability to save them, unlike some of these other platforms like Periscope. Periscope is Twitter's live streaming platform, and these videos disappear after 24 hours. So it's nice in the sense that if you do goof, it won't forever be on your Facebook page. I mean, you could obviously delete it, but it'll go away. Both of these platforms, Facebook Live and Periscope, have the ability to set timers or set a calendar event so people know that something's coming so you can promote it. And it also gives you the opportunity to create a title and a description, and you want to make sure that you're really snappy with your descriptions and titles because people will kind of scroll through what's coming up, and if they see something that intrigues them, they're more likely, obviously, to participate. If you decide to do either of these, you should also experiment with the times that you're doing it and make sure that you're kind of cross-pollinating. So if you're doing a Facebook Live, there's nothing that says that you can't promote it on Twitter and make people aware of it, and vice versa. If you're doing a Periscope, who says you can't post on Facebook reminding people to come over and visit you on Twitter? Some other video platforms are Snapchat and Instagram Live. Is anybody here on Snapchat? Wow. How do you have the time? Okay, there were a few other people too. Okay, awesome. Do you mind sharing what you do on Snapchat?
Well, it's a little bit more difficult because it's only like 9 or 10 seconds, and they disappear after 24 hours.
Yep.
And if you send them directly to someone. Sorry, it's a little more difficult because they all disappear within 24 hours. They only last 10 seconds, and if you send it directly to someone, then it disappears after they watch it. But it's still cool because you can geotag things, like you're here and you can say Washington, D.C., and people know exactly where you are. You can add like little notes you can draw on it. It's like more creative.
It's a little bit more personal too. It's less formal. I wouldn't necessarily say that you should use Snapchat as a way to hammer home your policy objectives, but it's it's a great way to kind of highlight to other people what your organization is about, what you're for, and shine a little bit of light on your personality. Instagram Live is also a fairly new platform. It's through, obviously, Instagram, and Facebook owns Instagram, so they're all one company. Instagram and Snapchat, if you're looking to get more into a younger audience, 18 to 34, this is your best bet. This is where you reach them. Again, with Instagram, you have the ability to incorporate some really fun features. Before you go live, it'll give you a 3-second countdown, so if you're not ready or you realize your hair's messed up, you have a little bit of time to straighten yourself out. It also gives you the flexibility of hiding the comments or disabling them and then re-enabling them. You can filter out some specific keywords, so you can omit any profanity if you think someone's going to go rogue and start posting bad language on your live broadcast. It's a good way to kind of safeguard these types of things. Like Periscope and like Snapchat, There's no archive feature, so your videos do disappear. So again, if you want to make sure that you are creating a good content library, you want your videos to stay up and be a good resource, Facebook is the way to go. I'm just gonna go through, because I know we're running out of time, to that resource page, because I think a lot of you guys will find this helpful. So here are one of the challenges. Before I worked at Lilly, I worked at a 4-person nonprofit, so I wore a lot of different hats. And we, unfortunately, didn't have Photoshop, which I've had in previous jobs, which is, some people know it's a really great photo editing tool. Good news is that I've found that you don't need Photoshop to get the job done. Here are some really great resources for good stock images. I know that that's a challenge that a lot of nonprofits have, is how do we incorporate photos, how do we keep our content fresh and updated, but without paying a subscription fee to stock image services. So here are a few really great resources that I found that I would recommend. That info.am, Infogram, is a great way to turn statistics and content into infographics. I'll leave it here. Does anybody have any other questions?
We have 1 or 2 questions, time for.
Okay.
Is there any restrictions what we can go live on or what we can take pictures of, or?
Oh, you mean tomorrow?
Yes.
I would probably ask permission beforehand. That's probably the most courteous thing to do. I mean, well, let me take it a step back. If you're walking down the hallway, I think that's free game. If you're outside, that's fair game too. If you're in a congressman's office, I would ask permission.